some very famous people known as Ed and Lorraine Warren. This was highly requested in a previous video when I talked about the real Amityville horror. And when I did that case, I thought it would be interesting to do a deep dive on Ed and Lorraine Warren. If you are not familiar with those two individuals by name, I would guess that you have heard of them through some very popular movies that have come out in the last decade or so. Those include The Conjuring and Annabelle. Ed and Lorraine Warren were the two paranormal investigators that were highly prevalent in those films. And you may have not known that Ed and Lorraine Warren were real people, and so we're going to talk all about them today and the cases they investigated throughout their lifetime. Before we jump into that, let's go over our housekeeping items. First, per usual, I will list a pinned comment down below that will have 3 cases that I am interested in covering, just like Ed and Lorraine Warren. I had listed that a while ago. A lot of people voted to cover it, so here we are. So I will be posting a comment of that nature. Please take a look at the list and vote for which one sounds the most interesting to you. And then, second and final request, if you are not already subscribed, I would greatly appreciate you considering in doing so. And then please also leave a comment down below, even if it's not related to voting. Comments bring me so much joy, even if it's just a hello. So please, please, please do so if you feel so inclined. Okay, so let's talk about Ed and Lorraine Warren. So, Ed and Lorraine Warren were the founders of the New England Society for Psychic Research. They investigated the majority of the infamous cases of haunting and demonic possession that occurred in the United States during their lives. Before Hollywood turned their ghost stories into blockbuster movies, Ed and Lorraine Warren really did make a name for themselves by investigating cases of paranormal hauntings and happenings. In 1952, the couple founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, and in the basement of their research center, they created their very own occult museum that was adorned with satanic objects and demonic artifacts. But the center's primary purpose was to serve as the base of operations for the couple. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, they investigated over 10,000 cases over the course of their careers with physicians, nurses, researchers, and police at their assistance. And both Ed and Lorraine claimed to be uniquely qualified decide to investigate strange and unusual phenomena. Lorraine would claim that she could see auras around people ever since she was 7 or 8 years old. As a child, she was very concerned and even afraid that if she ever told anybody this, especially her parents, that they would think she was completely crazy and that she would get in trouble. So she would not reveal the nature of her abilities until she was older. But when she met her husband, Ed Warren, at the age of 16, he knew there was something different about her. Ed actually grew up in a haunted house, and because of this was considered a self-taught demonologist as a result. So Lorraine and Ed would pool their talents together and set out to investigate the paranormal. And what they would find throughout the years is certainly enough to keep us up at night. And I will be the first to admit that the Conjuring movies and Annabelle scared the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really have a tolerance for scary movies, especially ones that are of the paranormal. Some of you might be laughing at that and think that those movies were not scary at all, and that's totally fine. That's your prerogative, but paranormal movies and stories really freak me out, and I think that's because I do believe in it to an extent. So I believe in evil spirits and I do believe in demons in certain ways, so maybe that's why those movies freaked me out so bad. But I wanted to talk about the famous cases that they were active in. But before I do that, I wanted to touch on something that I actually found very interesting. So, it's interesting when it comes to religion because some people will claim that people like Ed and Lorraine Warren were, witches or like magicians of sorts, basically claiming that their abilities were not of God, they were not sacred, that they were evil or of darkness. But according to Ed and Lorraine, they viewed their abilities as gifts from God, and they felt that it was their purpose to use their God-given gifts, experience, and expertise to hunt down the strange, the mystical, and the supernatural in an attempt to protect the world from evil. Ed and Lorraine had very strong ties to Catholicism, and they used their belief in the power of prayer to help them on their endeavors. They believed that demons and evil spirits are directly related to religion, and their firm upbringing in the Catholic faith only helped them along their supernatural path. Another interesting fact is that despite Ed Warren growing up in a home that was considered haunted and developing a deep interest in all things a very young age. As an adult, when he became a religionist, he would actually treat every case as a skeptical investigator, looking for facts and evidence to prove the existence of the paranormal. LORRAINE also would express that she was born with clairvoyant abilities, and these were abilities that she believed were possessed by everybody until she grew up, and experience showed her that this was not a typical belief. For those of you that may not be familiar with the concept of clairvoyancy, it's more or less being psychic, and it's the belief that you have the power of perceiving things or events in the future or beyond normal sensory contact. So that is something that she believed everybody had, but as she grew up, she realized that most people didn't share that skill. So as LORRAINE grew up, she would use that ability to communicate with spirits, and she would relay her sights, smells, sounds, and experiences to those that did not share these clairvoyant talents, including her husband Ed, because he did not share this talent with her. But together, the Warrens would create a passionate team of ghost hunters, gathering experience and wisdom each time they would visit a supernatural location. Okay, so let's talk about some of the most famous cases that were investigated by Ed and LORRAINE Warren. First notorious case we are going to talk about here briefly is the Snedeker house. In 1986, Carmen and Al Snedeker rented a house in Southington, Connecticut. While exploring this residence, they would uncover mortuary tools in the basement, leading them to the chilling realization that their new home was a former funeral parlor. And to them, it seemed as though many of the former clientele of this funeral home had never left. The smell of rotting flesh lingered throughout the house, and running water would at times turn blood red. The eldest Snedeker son was plagued by visions and claimed to see ghosts in the house. These ghosts reportedly sexually assaulted both Carmen and Al, the parents. So, with all of this going on, unsure of where else to turn, the family would ask Ed and LORRAINE Warren for assistance. After the famous couple examined the house, the Warrens attributed the hauntings to the ghosts of those who were brought to the funeral home. And they believed that the morticians had partaken in unsavory activities with the bodies, which is why the spirits of these deceased were now haunting the family and in turn assaulting them. The second notorious case we will talk about is the Perrin family. When Roger and Carolyn Perrin moved into a 200-acre farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 young daughters, they had no awareness of the dark history surrounding this home. Many former residents had died under horrible circumstances. A few were murdered, and others had actually hung themselves on the grounds. The Perrin family came to believe that their spirits of these people that were either murdered or that took their own lives were still very much present in the home. They believed that some of the spirits were benign and those ones would play with their children, but they also would note that there were other sinister spirits that would relentlessly torment the family. And Ed and Lorraine Warren would be brought in to help the Perrin family in 1974. However, their presence allegedly escalated the haunting of these spirits to the point where Roger would eventually ask the couple to leave. And it would be this story that would be the basis for the blockbuster film, The Conjuring. The third case we will talk about is the Enfield poltergeist. In 1977, single mother Peggy Hodgson called police to her home in Enfield, telling them she had witnessed furniture moving, and her 2 of her 4 children had heard knocking from inside the walls. In the subsequent 18 months, more than 30 people, including their neighbors, psychic researchers, and journalists, said they witnessed heavy furniture moving of its own accord and objects being thrown across a room. 2 of the children, Janet and Margaret, were also photographed levitating several feet off the ground. Lorraine and Ed Warren were contacted in 1978 and would conclude that a demonic presence inhabited this house. The fourth case we will talk about is also notorious and so well known, and that is of Annabelle. Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll which was originally gifted to a young nurse named Donna by her mother. When Donna took the doll back to her apartment, she and her roommate Angie noticed that it would often change its position, moving from one room to another. They would find notes scattered around the apartment reading, "Help me," in a childlike handwriting. Lou, who was Angie's boyfriend, would claim that he woke up one night totally frozen and saw the doll slowly crawl up his body, attempting to strangle him. Distressed by this, Donna and Angie reached out to a medium who told them that the doll was possessed by the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. The medium would assert that spirit was ultimately benevolent. But when Ed and Lorraine got involved, they had a differing opinion. They determined that a demonic presence was inhabiting the doll, and they performed a blessing in the residence before taking Annabelle off the young women's hands. The fifth notorious case is of the Smurl haunting. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a house on Chase Street, West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Strange occurrences followed, leading the Smurl family to believe that a demon possessed their home. They claimed the demon had slammed their German Shepherd into a wall, bit Jack's ear, and pushed one of their daughters down a flight of stairs. Both Jack and Janet were also said to have been sexually assaulted by the demon. In 1986, they contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, who confirmed that their house was indeed haunted. Ed Warren would go on to say that he had witnessed a dark mass form inside the home, and that the demon had left him a message telling him to get out. Case number 6 is called the South End Werewolf, and it is said that this is one of the most bizarre cases ever investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and actually occurred in England. A seemingly ordinary carpenter named William Ramsey claimed to be possessed by a demon that compelled him to take the form of a werewolf. Ramsey had experienced his first transformation at the age of 9. And as he described it, he was playing outside when he felt an icy cold breeze, followed by an awful smell, before he flew into a rage, uprooting a fence post, with the fence still attached and gnawing at the wire mesh. Ramsey would not experience another episode like this until adulthood. He would fly into violent fits of rage, during which he would display inhuman strength, baring his teeth and growling while curling his hands like claws. When the Warrens caught wind of this in 1989, they convinced William Ramsey to come to their church in Connecticut and undergo an exorcism with their specialist bishop, Robert McKenna. I would just like to say, as a side note, the description of him flying into that fit of rage, but also like baring his teeth and growling with that like inhuman level of strength, totally reminds me of the movie Split, because one of the personalities of the character basically does the same thing. Okay, and then the final notorious case is the Amityville case, which I did do a video on, but I will do a very brief recap on it in case you did not listen to it. So, the Amityville case may actually be one of the most well-known cases, if not the most well-known case investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, but I don't think people actually realized that it was Ed and Lorraine Warren. Before I researched it myself, I had no idea they were a part of it. Like, I knew of the Amityville horror, but I didn't realize it had anything to do with them. In my mind, The Conjuring and Annabelle were like the main ones I was aware of. But anyways, the haunting was in Amityville, Long Island in 1975, and the Lutz family had moved into their new home, where only a year before, mass murderer Ronald DeFeo Jr. had killed 6 members of his family. During the first 28 days of their stay, the Lutz family would report swarms of flies, banging noises, disturbing entities, and witnessing the levitation of family members. When the Warrens were asked to cleanse the house, they brought a local TV crew with them. They took photographs of the house, one of which seems to show a little boy standing in the shadow with glowing eyes. And I will show a photo of that here. I did show a photo of it when I actually covered this case. But Lorraine Warren would go on to say that the Amityville house case is the one that haunted her the most. Okay, so those are probably the most notorious cases, but as mentioned, they claimed to have covered over 10,000 cases. I'm just going to share some facts about them and how some of their cases became movies. So, as you guys know, because I mentioned it, but you probably already knew it before this video, Ed and Lorraine Warren's paranormal investigations served as the inspiration behind one of the most iconic horror movie franchises, which is the Conjuring series. The series began in 2013 with the release of The Conjuring, which earned more than $300 million at the box office. Since then, the series has expanded to include the films The Conjuring 2, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Comes Home, The Nun, and The Curse of La Llorona, with more films in production. Just a side note, I absolutely hated The Nun as well, and by hate, I mean it scared me so bad. I forgot that that movie was a part of this series. I'm just gonna call that the hidden gem of this video. I swear I take the most random things from classes I've taken. So the hidden gem of this video is that I am absolutely terrified of the Conjuring series movies. Now I'm thinking that maybe I'm gonna start a thing where I'm gonna slip a hidden gem piece of information in every video, and the person that comments it first correctly will win something. Now I'm thinking this through. Okay, well, as I figure that out, go ahead and comment down below the hidden gem that I have shared with you. Okay, next fact. Both Ed and Lorraine's interest in the paranormal started early. As a boy, as I mentioned, Ed grew up in a house that was haunted, and Lorraine began to notice her clairvoyant abilities at a young age, and she recognized auras around people as well. Ed, as a child, recalled doors opening on their own and strange lights starting to form inside his house. Fact number 3. Ed Warren had a near-death experience while serving in the Navy during World War II. Ed entered the Navy on his 17th birthday, and a few months later, the ship that Ed was on collided with an oil tanker in the North Atlantic Ocean. A fire erupted, and all of the men on the ship had to jump overboard. As Ed was in the icy water, he prayed for help and would soon be rescued. After that experience, he returned home and asked LORRAINE to marry him. Fact number 4. Ed Warren was a fine arts painter. The couple would use his painting skills as a way to gain entry into houses they wanted to investigate. So they would research the houses that they believed to be haunted, and then they would drive to the house. After Ed painted the house, he would hand the painting to LORRAINE. She would knock on the door and offer the homeowners the painting as their ticket into the house. Once she struck up a conversation with the homeowner, they would learn more about the property and hauntings. And this process was how their investigative career began. So I think that's how they did things in the beginning when they weren't sought out when they were famous. Fact number 5. The Warrens would try to rule out all logical or physical explanations before agreeing to take a case. They would not just take anyone's word when they said they were experiencing paranormal activity. Ed would go to the scene and use every avenue available to him to rule out all logical explanations before moving forward with the case, which I respect. Fact number 6. The first case that garnered media attention occurred in their hometown of Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1974, more than 20 years after Ed and LORRAINE began their work. The Warrens' family friend and psychic, Mary Pascarella, contacted them and informed them of the paranormal activity local Bridgeport residents Jerry and Laura Gooden were experiencing. Once news got out about the poltergeist affecting the house on Lindley Street, crowds began to form outside of the house. This would be the first case where the Warrens experienced such a large media presence as they tried to conduct their work. Fact number 7, which I did touch on already. Ed and LORRAINE were both devout Roman Catholics. Their devout faith included an inherent belief in the supernatural and a world beyond. The Warrens would work closely with the Catholic Church during multiple exorcisms, and their faith played a tremendous part in their investigations. Fact number 8. Ed and LORRAINE gained popularity in the mainstream media and even appeared on popular television shows, including The Merv Griffin Show, The Tom Snyder Show, A Haunting and Scariest Places on expanded their audiences through media appearances, speaking engagements, and college lecture tours, all in an attempt to prove that the devil was real. The Warrens continued to make television appearances throughout their career, and Lorraine actually even had a cameo in The Conjuring. Fact number 9. While the Warrens gained popularity, as you can imagine, they also gained critics. In an effort to prove her abilities were not faked, Lorraine underwent scientific testing by parapsychologists at UCLA. The team of scientists that examined Lorraine was led by Dr. Thelma Moss. After extensive studies, this group of parapsychologists would determine that Lorraine was a light trance medium. Now, when I read that, I was very curious as to what a light trance medium meant. And basically, it goes into, I read a scientific article basically, and it was called A Method of Measuring the Depth of Hypnosis by Leslie M. Lecron. More or less, the concept of a light trance medium, it occurs through the induction of an altered state of consciousness, and that person is able to allow the spirit world to capture their attention, or even place a hold on the mind, enabling a closer blending with the spirit world. The degree of that hold on the medium's mind would determine the quality and depth of the trance. So that's just an interesting fact about that. Fact number 10. The Warrens encountered a succubus during the paranormal investigation of Jack and Janet Smurl, which I did mention the Smurl family earlier. But this fact says, while investigating the Smurl family, Ed determined that the entity that was haunting them was a succubus, a specific name given to a demon that primarily attacks males. And then the final fact is number 11, which says when the Warrens' efforts to remove the succubus from the Smurl's house failed, they received reinforcements from a future Pope, Pope Benedict the 16th. And it says at the time of the Smurl haunting, Pope Benedict the 16th was known as Cardinal Ratzinger. The Warrens contacted the Catholic Church and described the haunting happening at the Smurl household. Cardinal Ratzinger assigned an exorcist from the Catholic Church who went to the house and performed a ritual of exorcism, the Ritual Romano. I ended up looking up the rite of exorcism through Catholicism, and it says that the priest delegated by the ordinary to perform this office should first go to confession, or at least elicit an act of contrition, and if convenient, offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass, and implore God's help in fervent prayers. And it says that this priest would wear a purple stole. And then having before him the person possessed. And if that person that's possessed poses any potential danger, that person should be bound. And then the priest would trace the sign of the cross over him, over himself and the bystanders, and then sprinkles all of them with holy water. After this, the priest would kneel and say the litany of the saints, exclusive of the prayers which follow it, and all that were present during the exorcism would make the typical response that you say in certain prayers in the Catholic Church. Now, the prayer itself, or the litany of the saints, is actually quite long, and I am not going to read it because I'm terrified that I'm going to somehow conjure something, which I am literally not here for. But oh gosh, do I want to read this? Okay, I'll read this one part. Good Lord, help me, you guys. This is what the priest would command of the demon. I command you, unclean spirits, whoever you are, along with all your minions now attacking this servant of God by the mysteries of the incarnation, passion, resurrection, and ascension of our Lord Jesus Christ, by the descent of the Holy Spirit, by the coming of our Lord for judgment, that you tell me by some sign your name, and the day and hour of your departure. I command you, moreover, to obey me to the letter. I, who am a minister of God, despite my unworthiness, nor shall you be emboldened to harm in any way this creature of God, or the bystanders, or any of their possessions. Okay, so that I guess is part of what the priest would say with Mr. Ed and Lorraine Warren present for an exorcism. Oh, okay, I actually found more of the exorcism, but your girl is not going to read that because I'm freaking myself out. So it's just a lot of casting out claims, but it's aggressive and no thank you. So anyways, that will conclude some interesting facts about Ed and Lorraine Warren. If any of the cases I mentioned that were the notorious cases that they covered sound interesting to you, definitely go ahead and let me know if you want me to cover those in the future. I would definitely consider doing that, and then just go ahead and humor me and comment down below what the little hidden gem of this video was, and I'm gonna figure out what we're gonna do with hidden gems. So I don't know if I'm literally thinking out loud right now. I don't necessarily know if it's fair to do the first person that comments the hidden gem accurately, because we have viewers in the United States, but we also have viewers in many different countries where the time zones are all different. So I feel like that would give an advantage to certain people. So I'm trying to think if 15 people comment the hidden gem, then we'll do an extra video, or I don't know, something like that. So until I figure out what the prize will be, please go ahead and comment down what I said was the hidden gem of the video. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here with me today, and until next